Two ordinary guys walk up a jagged hillside in sharp business suits and heavy winter raincoats. No umbrella, no hiking gear. Instead, they pull out two homemade sheets of heavy lead out of their own pockets, fasten them over their eyes like a pair of blindfolds, swallow a handful of unknown capsules, and then they lie down, side by side in the grass. They check their watches and wait for a signal that never comes. No sign of struggle, no wounds. Their wallets are left bustling with cash. The only clue that was left? A handwritten note with a timed countdown to a secret science experiment or a deadly cosmic appointment. Salutations, everyone. I am the author and the founder of the Blxck Archive, a true crime podcast that forces us to look at all crimes, but especially those living at the dead center of the system. Not the ones in the dark, where they're completely buried, not the ones blindly covered by mainstream media sensation. We look right in the middle, where the files are public record, yet the deepest, most unsettling truths just simply aren't highlighted enough. To truly understand our legal system, its blind spots, and obviously its failures, we have to look at a broad spectrum of cases, from dark historical mysteries to graphic, devastating crimes, where ordinary people chase the extraordinary and then pay the ultimate price. In today's episode, we're discussing an unsolved case involving possible ritualistic or experimental elements, decomposition, mysterious circumstances. While not graphically violent in the traditional sense, the details are deeply unsettling, so listener discretion is advised. Now let's open today's file. If two serious, middle-aged electronic technicians told their families that they were heading out to buy work supplies, you'd probably think, okay, normal Tuesday. But what if those same men were later found dead on a remote hillside, wearing suits and raincoats, with homemade lead masks covering their eyes like some sort of DIY goggles from hell? If a notebook in their pocket contained a precise, cryptic instruction, like a suicide note crossing over with a sci-fi script? And what if, after all these years, we still have zero idea how they died? This is a lead mask case of 1966, one of Brazil's most bizarre unsolved mysteries, and trust me, once you hear the details, it sticks. Let's recreate the afternoon of August 20th, 1966. The location is Morro do Vintém Hill, situated in Niterói de Janeiro, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. An 18-year-old local boy named Jorge da Costa is climbing the steep, unforgivable terrain to recover a runaway kite. The hill is notorious for its dense, thorny vegetation and sharp incline. As George cuts through the bushes, he spots an unnatural shape against a green backdrop. Two shapes, to be precise. Side by side, neatly laying out on a bed of looped branches, are two men. They're perfectly parallel to each other. George flees down the hillside to alert the local authorities. The system's failures begin at minute zero. The police department, citying the torrentious terrain, late afternoon shadows, and an immediate lack of resources refuse to climb that hill in the evening. The bodies are exposed to the elements, local wildfire, and the humid tropical night for over 15 hours. When a recovery team, accompanied by a journalist, finally ascends the hill on the morning of August 21st, they discover a scene so precisely staged it looks like an intentional tale. Two heavy waterproof raincoats, two custom-cut lead masks, one empty aluminum water bottle, one plastic packet containing two damp towels, the cash currency, 160,000, completely untouched, cryptic notebooks with handwritten laboratory instructions. The two men were identified, but they weren't drifters. They weren't desperate on the margins of society. They were respectable, middle-aged technicians. They had families. They were business owners and local fixers of radios and televisions. On the crime scene, they were dressed in formal, high-quality civilian suits. Over these suits, they wore identical, stiff, brand-new waterproof raincoats. Why wear heavy raincoats on a day with no forecast predictions? The investigation later reveals that these coats were purchased just a few hours before their death in a nearby shop. The masks that were resting over the eyes of each corpse were crude, heavy sheets of lead. These aren't manufactured safety equipment. They were hand-cut from a lead sheet using industrial shears, shaped into custom V goggles with no eye holes. They were designed to block out light completely, or to shield the eye from something intense. The police initially looked for a motive of robbery. They opened the wallet, and inside they found a combined sum of roughly 160,000. In 1966, this is a significant amount of money, more than enough to buy a used vehicle or fund a major business venture. Not a single note was missing. Next to their bodies sit a basic aluminum water container, completely empty. Beside it was a small plastic packet containing 2 hand towels, still damp with moisture. In one of their pockets, the investigators took out a small notebook. Written in clear, precise Portuguese handwriting were a set of instructions. The text read, 1630, Estar no location determinando. 1830, Ingere as capsula, após efeito, proteger o metaas, agudar sinal mascara. Let that sink in, while I translate and dissect the timeline of the note. 1630, which is 4:30 p.m., be at a specific location. 1830, 6:30 p.m., ingest the capsules. After the effect, protect the metals. Await signal. Mask. This isn't a suicide note, this is a technical checklist. It reads like a laboratory protocol or an engineering workflow. Protect the metals. What metals? There weren't any found on them. The lead mask himself, maybe, or something inside the body. To determine how 2 rational technicians would wound up on a hill with lead over their eyes, we have to look at the 3 days leading up to the discovery. August 17th, 9 o'clock. Leave Campos. Buy working parts. August 17th, afternoon. Arrive in Niterói. Business trip completed. August 17th, 14:30. Buy raincoats. Meticulous planning. August 17th, 15:45. Buy mineral water. Waitress notes panic. August 17th, 16:30. Ascend Vintém Hill. Last seen alive. August 17th, 18:30. The scheduled ingestion. The timeline goes dark. The 2 victims tell their wives they're leaving to purchase a bulk supply of electronic components and a second-hand car for their workshop. They hop on a bus with a large envelope of money. Instead of heading to the major commercial hubs, where the electronic parts would easily be found, they got off the bus in Niterói. They entered a local garment store. They looked calm. They purchased 2 identical raincoats. At roughly around 3:45 p.m., they enter a local bar/cafe, and they purchase a large bottle of mineral water. The waitress, later interviewed by the police, she states that one of them was visibly trembling. He was hyper-focused on his wristwatch, checking every single minute as if racing against an invisible countdown. They left the bar, walked out into the humid afternoon air, and began their march up the steep slope of Vintém Hill. They arrived at the specific location right on time, 4:30 p.m. By 6:30 p.m., the sun had set over. According to their own notebooks, this was the exact moment where they ingested the capsules. And then the timeline went dark. This is where my brain really starts to get confused. And this is where the Blxck Archive shines its light. The mystery of the lead masks isn't just about what happened on that hill. It's about how the state failed to find out. When the bodies arrived at the IML, the entire forensic system choked. The coroner's office was deeply understaffed and overwhelmed with a sudden spike in local homicides. Bodies sat in a non-refrigerated holding area during the humid tropical heat for days before a medical examiner finally picked up scalpel. By the time the autopsy was performed, the internal organs had suffered severe autolepsy. The toxicologist looked at the tissues and realized they lacked the advanced chemical resonance to isolate the complex poisons, volatile organic compounds, or experimental synthetic drugs. The medical examiner essentially threw his hands up. The official cause of death on the certificate? Ignorida, which translates to unknown. No signs of anything physical, no signs of a bullet entry wound, no blunt force trauma to the skull. Because the state failed to provide an objective truth, the vacuum was filled up by wild, multi-layered theories. Let's break them all down, systematically. In 1966, Brazil was experiencing a massive wave of UFO sightings and parallel explosions in spiritualist and esoteric cult movements. Morro do Vintém was a known hotspot for local mystics. A local resident stepped forward with a fascinating statement. She swore that the evening of August 17th, between 6:30 p.m. till 8:30, the exact window of the capsule ingestion, she was driving past a hill with her children, and they saw a bright, luminous orange oval object hovering directly above the summit of the hill. It emitted pulses of light and sharp flashes before silently shooting away. Did the victims believe that they were radio communicating with extraordinary intelligence? Did they expect a ship to arrive? Were the lead masks designed to protect their antennas from blinding radiations? This is the most grounded yet terrifying theory. The victims were a part of a tight-knit underground subculture. These men weren't just fixing TVs, they were experimenting with high-frequency transmitters, energy machines, and homemade electronic devices that were designed to pierce the veil of the physical world. A few months prior, another technician in their immediate circle was found dead, under almost identical circumstances. on a different beach hillside, also involving homemade electronic compounds. Were they trying to build a psychic amplifier? Did they take a lethal dose of some unknown compound or a heavy sedative to elevate their brains into an alpha wave state to match the electromagnetic frequency? Let's look at the criminal reality for a second. The two men had massive amounts of cash on them when they left home, but only a fraction was found in their pockets on the hill. Where did the rest go? There are whispers of a mysterious spirit guide or a rogue electronic expert who convinced these two brilliant native technicians that he could sell them a revolutionary piece of equipment, or induct them into a secret science society. This third man may have instructed them to write the note, provided the lethal capsules, under a guise of an experimental drug to increase perception, waited for them to slip unconscious, stolen the bulk of cash, and then walked down the hill unnoticed. Here's what gets me at this, politically and systematically. It's how resource limitation basically killed the investigation before it even started. Be it an overloaded coroner's office, delayed autopsy, no advanced testing. In a country experiencing deep political turbulence and military rule at the time, how many cases like this slipped through just because the system was stretched thin or uninterested in weird deaths involving working-class technicians? These men weren't criminals. They were victims of obvious street violence. They were curious, possibly brilliant at their field, chasing something bigger than themselves. And the system couldn't even give their families a clear, definitive answer. Nearly 60 years later, the lead mask case is still open in spirit. The notebook, the mask, the raincoats, all locked away in state archives. Vintém Hill is quieter now, but hikers and true crime tourists still go up there, looking for echoes. So here are some of the questions I keep coming back to. What made two rational men climb a hill, put on lead masks, ingest something, and lie down and wait for a signal? Was it a cosmic contract? A scientific breakthrough that went wrong? Maybe just enlightenment? Or was it something much darker, malicious manipulation by someone who knew exactly how to exploit their brilliant burning curiosity? We may never know, but that's why this case lives in the dead center. Perfectly documented, yet completely unsolved. Let me know your theories in the comments. Was it a UFO, science gone wrong, spiritualism, or something even stranger? Until the system starts enforcing the lines that it draws on paper and actually investigating instead of just letting mysteries rot, the dead center of our archive will always continue to grow. This is the Blxck Archive. Stay sharp, stay questioning, and I will see you in the next file.